against Rafel Yuiti, so it's going to be Germany against Brazil for this one.
Yep, we have our first European player on the stream in a match right now. Jan on the left is going to be playing, as we were talking about, that Arceus Duraludon.
So now we get to see it in full action. We get to see the merits it has, the power it has against the metagame, and we're just going to get confirmation of Rafael's deck as well. But I do believe he is playing the Lugia deck. We can just
I do believe that is the case. We're going to confirm that shortly, though. And we'll see
exactly
how this matchup
Yes.
plays out. I do think that Rafel has answers here. It looks like we've got the Lost Vacuum in the deck, and we talked about that, and a key card in the prizes for Yan, that big parasol.
Yeah, that's absolutely huge. So that's he's not going to want to see that. It means that he's going to have a harder time finding it when he needs to. Now, I imagine he'll be playing multiple copies, so just prizing just the one shouldn't be a problem.
Yes,
but
2 copies for sure.
Yes, and we do see there, just looking at the list, yes, 2. So he still has access to 1, thankfully.
Yep, this is going to be great, and we're getting into this match. It does look like Jan is going first, which is a huge advantage here for the Arceus Duraludon player. Yeah,
so we're starting off with that double turbo energy as well, so really starting off well, and actually, that's all he needs is double turbo energy and pass, but that means no Duraludon down, which is not very great.
Not ideal at all. Now, I did watch one of Jan's games out in the field in the last round, and they play a very interesting card. They play a copy of Thornton. So there is a way to get an extra Duraludon into play through that card.
Wow, okay. So yeah, of course, so Thornton letting you choose a basic Pokemon in your discard pile and switch it with one of your basic Pokemon in play with any attached cards, damage counters, special conditions, etc., transferring onto the new one. But because it's treated as a Pokemon that's been in play for a turn when that happens, you can say switch an Arceus for a Duraludon and then evolve straight into a Duraludon VMAX.
Yes. So Rafel now grabbing the Lugia V out of the deck with an Ultra Ball, and this Ultra Ball did lose a double turbo, which is less than ideal, but did also discard an Archeops, which is exactly what this deck aims to do. Yeah,
you want to get, as we've seen so many times already, get 2 Archeops in the discard pile as quickly as possible so you can get the maximum value out of that Summoning Star V-Star power. But it looks like after this, Rafel going to be puts down the Lugia with a powerful Color Energy. Does have a Crobat to put down as well, drawing a decent amount of cards with a Dark Asset, but not really. Looks like you see that Lost Vacuum there ready in hand. Rafael's going to want to make sure to keep access to that as long as he can so that he can get rid of that big Parasol. And he's seeing an Arceus, you've got to think if you're Rafel, you're already starting to, bear that in mind a little bit.
Yeah, what exactly could my opponent have in their deck? And most likely Arceus Duraludon. It seems like the most popular way to play Arceus right now in the current meta. So decent turn here for Rafel. Leaving the Raikou in the active, it's something you don't really mind if it gets KO'd. Not going to be too big of a deal. You definitely don't want to let a Lugia take a hit necessarily. And over on Yan's side, going with the Chorus's Experiment, I do think there is a Duraludon V in there.
Does seem that way, and yeah, very easy Lost Zone choices there for Yan. Just going to Lost on that Drapion V, don't need that, and the Bird Keeper doesn't need that right now either.
It does have that Thornton in the hand, so that could be an interesting play at some point. I don't know if it'll come up in this spot specifically, but maybe we'll see it at some point later on. Now, the big question here, is there an out to Arceus V-Star in this hand?
I see something that could maybe vaguely look like an evolution incense.
There's a Duraludon in there for sure.
Okay. But yeah, no, I don't necessarily. You think if there was the out to the V-Star, you would have slammed it down a bit at this point, but...
And especially with this energy attachment going to the bench, it doesn't look like we'll be seeing a Trinity Nova.
No, so maybe just a Trinity Charge instead? Yeah.
Which is okay.
Yeah, it's not ideal, of course. Just lets you attach free basic energies from your deck to your V Pokemon any way you like, but really not getting that damage in and not being able to evolve into that V-Star and use that important V-Star power course, Starbirth. One of the first V-Star powers that was revealed, and still arguably one of, if not the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Just the ability to grab any 2 cards out of your deck and load them into play is so incredibly strong, especially with decks like this where you're hoping to find specific pieces in specific matchups, like the big Parasols, as we mentioned. Now, the Trinity Charge was able to load up 2 energies, not only onto the Duraludon V, but also adding 1 additional energy to this active Arceus V as well, so that Jan will have options for either of those 2 cards.
Yeah, and this bodes quite well, right? Because what this means now is that on the side, no matter which one gets KO'd, whether the Arceus V or the Duraludon V gets KO'd, there's still some kind of attacking pressure that can be mounted next turn. Of course, he'd rather bring out the Duraludon VMAX if you can, and so I'm sure that what Rafel will be looking for this turn is some kind of card to bring up the Duraludon V and KO it.
Yeah, this is a massive opening, absolutely, for Rafel, and this is exactly why this matchup can still go in Lugia's favor, even though on paper it should be a favored matchup. If you can find a Serena or Boss's Orders in combination with getting a bunch of Archeops in the discard pile, you can potentially take a quick lead. Now, it looks like Serena is being played, but it is for that first effect. It, of course, can bring up a Pokemon V on the bench, but it can also discard cards from your hand up to 3 and then draw cards until you have 5. So it's a great way to bail you out if you have kind of an unfortunate hand, which must have been the case here for Rafel.
Yeah, it's a bit of a missed opportunity here for him, obviously, not being able to KO the Duraludon V, but of course, this is one of the benefits of Serena. It is the fact that, you know, in a situation where you do need to be bailed out and you can't go for the ideal play, you can still draw cards and find your setup at least, and that's one of the reasons why Serena's so good.
And this can still be just fine for Rafel, right? Take 2 prizes here on this Arceus V. Jan sends up the Duraludon V, and if they're not able to find a Parasol, especially would be made much harder now that there's no access to Starbirth, you're maybe in a just fine spot if you can get that amazing rare Eviltal all set up and powered up, ready to go.
Yeah, I'm sure that Rafel will be thinking about exactly that as we do see the first Primal Turbo there being fired off. Just going to put 2 powerful Colored Energies onto the bench, Lugia V-Star, and then once again with the second Primal Turbo, probably just going to get 1 energy to retreat the Raikou. Not really an attacker that he wants to use in this matchup.
Not at all. Now, I do think we still need 1 more energy onto the Lugia, but Rafel has not attached return yet, and there is the V-Guard energy coming down.
Very important, of course. I don't think it necessarily helps too much with the map against Duraludon VMAX, but you know, having on there is still a nice boon.
And also Duraludon VMAX's attack hits through effects, so it actually doesn't even worry about the damage on. But it can matter, of course, against Arceus potentially. Rafel takes an early lead, though. 2 prizes, taking out that Arceus V-Star. What does Jan have there as the top deck of the Duraludon? That Skyscraper ability is going to potentially slow things down. But there's a chance that Rafel could just win the game this next turn. I don't know if there's much else. Oh, not anymore, though. With that Boss's Orders, this will target the Archeops, and now there's not going to be an option for that Eviltal. Yeah,
that's very, very clever, actually. Very heads-up play from Jan, recognizing, okay, if Eviltal is the thing that I'm scared of, what powers it up? Archeops. I'll just KO that instead.
Yeah, that's a super, super heads-up play on their side of the field. Now, there's no Path to the Peaks or anything like that from Rafel. There is like the Collapse Stadium. That's not going to be too relevant here. It's got to be really just the Eviltal to get powered up, and you're going to have to, at this point, bench it and charge it up with a Primal Turbo and just hope your opponent doesn't have back-to-back Boss's Orders.
Yeah, pretty much. And, you know, from Jan's side, you'll say he wants to make sure that he has a backup attacker as well, just in case, obviously, Rafel is able to find some out. You know, Jan doesn't know if Rafel plays around in Path to the Peak, for example, so he wants to keep himself a little bit safe. Yeah,
play around anything your opponent could possibly have. And eyeing up the Arceus V is interesting as well. This can maybe try to set up for the V-Star on the future turns.
Absolutely, it could. And interesting enough, Jan does actually just opt to just go for the Arceus V that be there. And like I said, maybe later on trying to go for a Starbirth just to find some key pieces. It's still important to be able to go for that.
Yeah, and even if Rafel did find a way to knock out this Duraludon in the next couple of turns, Jan sitting on that Thornton already in the hand with another Duraludon VMAX, so that's kind of an interesting thing as well.
Lots of factors here to consider as Jan does take the knockout, and now it's going to be back on Rafel to try and find a way to answer this skyscraper of a Duraludon VMAX.
Yeah, and I think the way, like I said, is bench that Eviltal and cross your fingers. Hope that there is not a second Boss's Orders in your opponent's hand. Now, something that is interesting and certainly worth noting is that some players do choose to play Serena as opposed to Boss's Orders. This is something that Rafael's probably thinking of. There is a chance that if Jan has access to Serena but not Boss, that Eviltal would be safe there on the bench, right?
Yeah, that's definitely going to be something you consider, and a lot of lists have made that switch, so it's a reasonable gamble, I guess you could take in that sort of sense.
And Jan does play a split, 1 Serena and 3 Boss's Orders, and that is something that could come back to bite them here.
Yeah, we'll have to see which one they find, I guess, as Rafel, in the meantime, finds the Luminion V and goes for the Luminous Sign. Didn't actually quite see where he went for. Oh, okay, he has actually
going for it now, yep, and the Serena. And this is a great option as well, as this. There's nothing that Rafel can do to the active Duraludon, but Serena can bring up this Arceus V, and that's a quick, pretty easy 2 prizes.
Yeah, and now the ideal turn, of course, would be use the Serena to bring up the Arceus Akira, whilst at the same time getting the Yveltal out and starting to power up, so that way you're taking some prizes and advancing your tempo and your game plan, whilst at the same time preparing yourself to get the final knockout on the thing that none of your Pokemon can usually touch.
Yes, exactly. That is what we are hoping to see on Rafael's side, and Yan is hoping to see a little bit of help from the top here. Maybe the big Parasol, that would be a huge find for sure. At a minimum, though, Yan is feeling probably still okay in this spot, not out of it yet. The hand is not super strong. Looks like a couple Pokemon, couple energies, and the Thornton. It will just be a G-Max Pulverization, dealing 220 damage as the V-Guard energy, is not affected. Does hit through effects. Yeah, so it's going to be the full 220 there, unfortunately, for Rafel. There we go. Now we got the fixed number of damage. But there was no Yveltal down last turn, though, so now Rafel needs to kind of find it, start charging up, and like we were saying before, hope that Yan can't find a boss's orders before the Yveltal gets charged up. Rafel actually going for, okay, there it is. Pulled the Lugia to the front for a second, but it will be Yveltal. That is definitely the better thing to grab here. And with no recovery in Rafael's list, if Yan does have access to a boss, and I think it would have to be through a top deck here, then Yan would, I think, be in a just fine spot. But and probably just win the game, honestly. But if this Yveltal is allowed to remain on the field for a turn and can just be charged up once again on the next turn, now only needing 1 more energy in order to be able to attack. You don't even need Archeops necessarily. Yan's draw for turn was not a boss. It was a Marnie.
Marnie not going to do it. As I mean, it's still going to be the card that Yan plays, but really needed to KO that Yveltal this turn, and that's now no longer on the cards.
Not at all. Marnie, at this point now, hoping to find the big Parasol. Maybe if the big Parasol comes down, there's a chance that you can fight back. Maybe if your opponent does not play a Lost Vacuum or they can't find it. I don't think I see one here in this hand.
I see Hyper Potion. I think a couple of Arceus V-Stars. Would like to maybe see that earlier, but no, just G-Max Pulverization, and then isn't that basically the game?
It could be. Now, Yan, might as well play it out for just the last few seconds here. There is always a chance Rafael could have prized a bunch of energy cards, but we should see the win here. Just needs 1 more Aurora. There's another one for good measure, and that amazing destruction just knocks out Arceus Duraludon, and Rafael goes up 1-0 in this game.
And what were we saying before about how, in spite of it being a counter deck, we can just still beat Arceus Duraludon? There is a masterclass in exactly how that goes.
Yep, exactly how it can go. Now, Yan did start kind of shakily early on, just kind of had an Arceus, didn't get a Duraludon super quickly, never found the Arceus V-Star, so it wasn't the best showing from the Arceus Duraludon deck. But that is what that deck can do from time to time, and I think that's one of the reasons players kind of tend to stray away from it.
Because, and this is true of a lot of like counter decks that popped up over the years, right? It's one of those things where, they are built in a way to beat what could be the best deck in the format, but sometimes the best deck in the format, or like the most popular deck, is just so strong, and it's so, has it enough things going for its own side that even the counter deck sometimes can just fold to it.
Yes, and that was a great setup of games from Rafael, setup of turns, I should say, being able to take out 2 Arceus and then the 1 Duraludon VMAX to close out the game. And something else to note, Rafael did not have to reveal the Lost Vacuum in that game. So that's something that Yan doesn't even know that Rafael has in his arsenal. That's
a very good point. Yeah, in that game, it was just a matter of, Lugia be able to like win without, the answer out, as it were. So now Yan's going to have to maybe bear that in mind and think, oh, okay, I lost this game even though I wasn't able to draw my usual, ideal setup. Maybe he has something to counter even the ideal setup, and I need to make sure that I take that into account when I'm doing my thing.
Yeah, we'll see if things can go a little better for Yan in this one. I think the ideal setup is just getting a turn 2 Arceus, having 2 Duraludon down, getting double big Parasol into play. And I think if Yan can do that, they probably just win the game. Looking at how these lists are built, Rafael doesn't really have anything for 2 Duraludon, with both of them having the big Parasol on them. So if that can happen, I think Yan is just going to probably win the game.
Yeah, so I'm sure that's the ideal setup that Yan would like to go for. So we do see a mulligan from Yan's side. Of course, he will be going first in this game, so that will help a lot as well. Just, as long as he can find those early basics, he'll be good to go.
Absolutely. Yep, all about getting those Pokemon into play. And I think also with this deck, it's all about starting Arceus V. You don't really want to start Duraludon V with this deck because of how important Trinity Nova is. If at a minimum, just Trinity Charge as well being a really strong option, which we saw Trinity Charge, getting a bunch of energies in play in the last game. So really fingers crossed here for Yan that there's not a Duraludon in the active.
Yeah, and we'll see there as he draws the opening hand again, and there's another mulligan.
Yeah, and this will happen with this deck from time to time. You do only play a handful of basics, the 4 Arceus V, the 2 Duraludon V, and Yan also is playing 1 copy of Drapion V, which is pretty interesting. It does decrease your chances to start the Arceus V, but it probably increases your Mew matchup decently.
I mean, yeah, but Drapion's one of those very easily insertable counters that increases your Mew matchup favorability by so much. Even if it's just to take free prizes and then it gets knocked out in return, gets lost zone, that's still like an easy free prizes that you can take with it that makes it worth the include.
Yeah, and if your opponent isn't playing Lost City, which is a stadium that most Mew players feels like have moved away from, maybe some of the Fusion Strike lists are still on that card. It'll still be included from time to time. You can Thornton it back into play. You can Thornton the Drapion and put it back into play once again. And
actually, and equally, sort of, even if kind of on the same point, if you start with Drapion, but you can get another good basic in this card, then you can Thornton the Drapion away into something good.
The Thornton plays are just unbelievable, to be honest.
They really are. So, yeah, pricing on both sides doesn't look too bad, to be honest. Nothing like really, really vital. Some maybe, one-offs of things that you play multiple copies of, so workable, I'd say.
Yeah, we saw Boss being a really important piece for Yan in that first game, so having one of those up in the top of the prizes is a little awkward. It makes it less likely you'll have access to it early on when you may want it, but it looks like the start has been pretty good for Yan, as there is an Arceus in the active with an energy on it, and a few more cards to think about playing as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think Arceus plus energy is like the baseline, right? As long as you've got that, the rest you can kind of like take or leave. And yeah, Yan is pretty happy. Oh, actually, it does have a Duraludon on the bench as well. So
Very good.
So it is actually a really, really good start here. Like better than game 1 even.
Absolutely. Now, Rafel will start it off with an Evolution Incense, searching out any Evolution Pokemon and adding it to the hand. Got to feel like this will grab that Archeops right away, and potentially, if Rafel has a way to just discard it, that would be great on this turn as well. Yeah,
even if it's just to like read the wind, obviously it's never an ideal attack to use, but if you're going second, it can be a good option just to draw some extra cards and get the Archeops in the discard pile. But would ideally like to do something else, and Rafel's hand does look pretty stacked here. Looks like there is going to be an Ultra Ball, actually, just discarding a Radiant Charizard and the Archeops. Radiant Charizard being a really great attacker, but not so much in this matchup.
Yeah, it's not the best in this matchup. It could come into play if your opponent has a Duraludon V on the bench that hasn't become the VMAX quite yet, but more than likely your opponent's going to get more set up than that.
Yeah, indeed.
Now, Rafel can totally go for the Read the Wind here because there's not really a way for Yan to take a knockout on this active Lugia V, right?
No, it's true.
So it would be okay to go for Read the Wind. You would increase the hand size and also ditch a Archeops for the turn, set yourself up nicely for the future. And I think this hand actually has a ton of energy cards in it, so regardless of if Rafel wanted to go for it or not, I think it may be the only option.
Yeah, maybe right. There you go. Powerful Colorless Energy plus the Choice Belt, and yeah, just straight away, Read the Wind. Again, that's 2 Archeops in the discard pile.
Pretty good. Oh my goodness, I think Rafel drew 2 more energy cards off that
What?
in the Amazing Rare Eviltal. I'm pretty sure that their hand is like 5 energy cards plus Eviltal. That is less than ideal.
Probably going to want to find a Marnie sooner rather than later,
Yeah,
I would say.
Absolutely. Now, Yan's side able to play that Colress's Experiment. It's always interesting to me the decks that choose to play Colress's Experiment when they're not wanting to actively Lost Zone cards, right? Like this deck does not really want to put cards in the Lost Zone, but it turns out just seeing 5 cards off the top of your deck is pretty good.
Yeah, it's a very interesting development that we saw. Like the Arceus Gudra decks kind of took this path as well, and it seems the same with Arceus Duraludon, is that it's better to keep your hand and add 3 more from a pool of 5 rather than discard your whole hand and draw 7.
Now, one of the key cards off that Colress was the Big Parasol. It is already here, and we see Yan putting it down right away, recognizing how vital it is. I don't know that I see an out to a Duraludon VMAX, though.
No, and not to an Arceus V-Star either, so yeah, gonna have to be happy with just attaching another metal to the active and just going for the Trinity Charge, which is okay, but it's really not where you want to be ideally, because now there's an opportunity again for Rafel to use a Serena or a Boss's Orders to bring up the Duraludon and KO it.
Yeah, that would be massive. Now, the Duraludon V does have the Hard Coat ability, which means it takes 30 less damage from attacks. But Rafael's already prepped for that. Got the Choice Belt on the active and the Powerful Colorless Energy. It is going to be pretty easy for a Lugia V-Star to take the knockout. Let's see if Rafael can do anything. Actually, now that we're mentioning it, I don't know that there's really anything Rafael could top deck that really aids him to do that in this spot, because we know that the hand is like 5 energy cards.
Well, I mean, getting a Lugia V-Star would be pretty good, right? Because
right, but
yeah.
I don't think you're going to be able to target the Duraludon this turn.
Okay, no, not unless you already have like a Serena or a Boss in hand, but I don't recall seeing one.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so another Lugia V. That's really not what you want.
Looks like another Read the Wind to me.
That's actually really unfortunate.
And that feels so bad in a spot, especially like this one where your opponent, I mean, this would be such a big opening for Rafel, but his deck is failing him in this spot.
Oof, yeah, that's really, really rough. And Yan has what he draws the Arceus V-Star for turn.
Wow, that is a huge draw, especially now with this active Lugia V having so many energies committed to it. Yan could just switch into a Duraludon VMAX here. What a huge top deck. That Starbirth V-Star power being so incredibly powerful.
That is absolutely enormous. And we see there the Chorus's experiment as well. It really is not going to take a lot. I mean, at this point, yeah, you don't even bother with Trinity Nova. You just go straight into the...
Let's KO this Lugia, for sure.
KO this Lugia with a thing that can't be touched by anything with special energy. Like, I like those... I like that scenario.
Sounds like a good play to me, honestly. And I like the sequencing decision as well from Yan, playing the Chorus's experiment before utilizing that Starbirth V-Star power, because you want to see 5 cards before you go select 2 specific ones out of your deck. Because what if, you went for Starbirth first, got a Duraludon VMAX, and then you used Chorus and found your other one, right? It would feel like you wasted your Starbirth.
Yeah, so it's always important to go for the more unknown search or dig first before you go for the guaranteed one.
Yes. Do your unknowns before you do things that are known quantities, for sure. Good rule of thumb in the Pokemon TCG.
Yeah, we do see there the Ultra Ball grabbing that Duraludon VMAX straight away, discarding a Drapion and a Fulton, both cards that I think Yan has no interest in using at this point in time.
Not at all. And Duraludon VMAX is up and running, and we still have not seen that V-Star power be utilized. Could honestly hold off on doing it. Just attach retreat, go in like that.
Or, I mean, if you really want to as well, you could just go attach the Choice Belt and take a care with the Arceus V-Star as well. There's no double turbo.
This is true. Yeah, that's a good point. Double turbo did not have to be used. I will say in this spot, I mean, it makes sense to do it like this. I guess you might as well, but it would be really nice if you could do this and put energies onto a bench Duraludon V. So maybe we'll see Yan go for the Starbirth to do that specifically. I don't know. Let's find out.
Yeah, actually, no, just saving it.
Okay.
Saying, okay, Trinity Nova is enough, and maybe going to attach, a couple of energies just to make a Hyper Potion easier later. Could be a move.
Yeah, it seems like a decent play. We see one Hyper Potion already there in the Lost Zone, but there are multiple in this deck. Definitely a really important card that we see plenty of in this Arceus Duraludon deck, playing 3 copies here in Yan's list.
Yep, and there it is, just the one fighting energy being attached onto the bench Duraludon V.
Oh, look at this hand from Rafel. There's just nothing happening. Yeah, and Rafael's going to concede it. What a missed opportunity there when your opponent just had the perfect start for you to be able to capitalize, and your hand just had so many energies. Yan got much more set up. It was a turn slower, I think, than they would have liked, but they're still able to win Game 2 here, and we're going into Game 3.
And with so many cards in hand as well. I mean, Rafael's hand size was absolutely enormous.
Yes.
I mean, yet not a single one of those cards was actually helpful in, helping him mount a comeback.
Yeah, let's give that deck a real good shuffle here, Rafel. Mix those energies up nice, and try to draw a new hand of 7 and hope that this next game will go better in your favor. Now, at this spot, there is plenty of time left for a full Game 3 to complete. Both of these players will have plenty of time remaining, so not expecting any ties to go down unless something absolutely wild happens.
Yeah, no, not in this kind of matchup. I think the back and forth happens a bit too quickly between these two, so yeah, we're going to see a completed match here, I'm sure, as well. And, at least the saving grace here for Rafel is that, of course, in Game 3, given that he lost Game 2, he will be able to go first. So maybe that leaves an opening for Yan to do a Trinity charge with the Arceus V, but it means that he'll be able to get out his Lugia pretty quickly.
Yes, and it's going to all depend on that opening hand. Of course, no supporter being able to be played on that first turn when you're going first, so Lugia can sometimes struggle in those spots. You obviously want to go first, but you're just kind of hoping that in this opening hand, okay, hopefully there's an Evolution Incense and a Quick Ball or Ultra Ball, some way to just get an Archeops down, maybe a supporter for the next turn, and of course, wanting to find a way to get a Lugia V into play is the premium most important thing.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and I think Rafael's taking your advice, giving that deck a real good shuffle right now, making sure that we don't get a repeat of what happened in game 2 there.
Yeah, let's mix those cards up real nicely, and a little bit of a discussion here with the judge, just figuring things out. Looks like judge shuffle happening here, and we're all good, and we'll get into Game 3 here shortly.
Yes, we will. So, I think in both those games, we kind of saw how the matchup could very easily. Well, we saw how the deck that's unfavored can pull it back and win, and how it might go in other situations where the counter deck is running on all cylinders.
Yes.
What are we expecting to see in Game 3 here?
I do still have to give the consistency edge a little bit to the Arceus deck just because it has ability to utilize that Starbirth V-Star power, but of all the Arceus decks, I definitely think Arceus Duraludon is the least consistent of them. There's nothing like Crobat or Inteleon or Bibarel in this deck to add to your consistency, especially in the early game. So you're really relying on getting an Arceus early and hoping you can find a V-Star on turn 2.
Yeah, and it's funny how, you know, the most successful Arceus decks recently have gravitated towards this, because you'd think, oh, consistency is king always, you know, the more consistent your deck is, the more likely you are to pull off your deck strategy and win. But by virtue of how these decks operate with the tank ability, you kind of have to build the deck and play it this way, and just kind of hope that you'll be seen through.
Oh, Yan has prized a big Parasol once again.
Oh,
that is
dear.
Definitely something that could come into play, but we're getting into this game. Looks like it's a decent start here. Rafel did go first, started a Lugia, attached an energy, and has now passed it back over to Yan.
Yeah, you just, I mean, it is still Lugia turn 1, so I'd say like, as starts go, it's still pretty okay, but now it's going to be on Yan to see. Oh, Yan, wow.
Does find the one big Parasol in the deck in this opening hand. That has got to feel pretty good.
Yeah, and be able to put it on the Duraludon V straight away as well, and now probably going to be debating on the Marnie. He does play Crystal Cave first, but yeah, then just Marnie's away the rest of his hand, just going to try and find, well, ideally an energy. Obviously, you want to have an energy on the Arceus V so you can do a Trinity Nova next turn.
Yeah, Crystal Cave is not really a card that matters in this matchup, because if your Dragon-type Pokemon are taking damage, they are usually being KO'd,
yeah,
right?
Yes.
So you're not really going to be getting any healing. Yan is able to find a double Turbo Energy to Trinity Charge, but the other 4 cards are also energy.
Oh my goodness. It's literally all energy.
It's all energy. 4 basic energy in Yan's hand. That is not what you want to see. Now, over on Raphael's side, this hand is not the best. It had an okay turn 1, got a Lugia and an energy on it, but no Archeops in the discard pile. I think that Raphael's only draw out in hand might be a Serena. There is at least a Archeops there, or an Evolution Instance to get an Archeops theoretically in the hand. Let's see what this draw for turn is after Yan is finished shuffling.
Going to be a very, very big draw here for Rafel. He needs to find something to bail him out. So does Yan, though, to be fair, with a hand like that. Oh, goodness.
Yes, not ideal. Draw for turn is an Evolution Instance. That is actually a huge
draw.
Oh,
Yes.
Raphael here has a couple of options. You could either get just 2 Archeops, or you could get an Archeops and a Lugia into play. What do you think is going to be the go-to play here for Raphael?
There is merit to both. Obviously, the greedier play would be to go for double Archeops and then Serena, because then if you don't hit Lugia, you're very much sad times. But it might be worth it, potentially, because you really want to have double Archeops out to be able to get out the Yveltal powered up easily, especially knowing that Yan is very much playing heads up and using Boss's Orders to KO the Archeops, which we saw in Game 1. So, yeah, there's definit's merit.
It almost feels like going for the Lugia would be overly safe. I think you kind of have to get the double Archeops down here, right?
It's always funny with Pokemon TCG, because there's instances where, something playing it safe is much better, but there are some instances where you have to accept actually the in quotes, greedier play is the correct one on the basis of the matchup I'm facing or the circumstances of the current game state.
Yep, and we did see Raphael just flash that Lost Vacuum, wanted to make sure it was in the deck. Sure enough, it is available, as that big Parasol is already on the Duraludon V on the bench.
Yeah, and maybe as well the fact that the big Parasol is already on the bench is a factors in as well, because Raphael's thinking to himself, okay, so now I need to make sure to thin out as much as possible and draw as much as possible with Serena, and make sure I can find my Lost Vacuum as quickly as possible, as we saw there, Raphael able to just flashing it quickly to us so we can see it in there, but we knew that already.
Yep. Now, there is an energy card in hand. We could see Raphael attach it for turn here. We'll do that, and Serena will draw the full 5 cards. The only thing Raphael really needs here is a Lugia V-Star or a way to get one. Let's see it. 1, 2, 3.
That's Lost Vacuum 4, 5. I don't think I see how it's Lugia V-Star.
Wow, no Ultra Ball, no Instance, and no Lugia. It's another Read the Wind? Is that what we're going to see here?
I think it's going to have to be, yeah. I mean, you can just discard the Radiant Charizard here. It's, probably the best option to discard. It's very not useful, so at least there's a good discard fodder. But, yeah, big miss from Raphael here.
And a big opening for Yan. Now, let's not forget, Yan has 4 energy cards in hand. Oh, but the top deck of the Arceus V-Star, that is incredible. Possibly the best top deck Yan could have had.
Oh, my goodness. Arceus V-Star off the top, and now Yan can just get absolutely everything he needs and set up perfectly.
This is huge. Now, we'll attach to the active. Let's see what Yan goes for here. There's a couple of options. We could see a Marnie plus a Duraludon be a grab, right? Then you can just retreat into the Duraludon, take this knockout, and send your opponent's large hand to the bottom of the deck. Anything else you really would expect to see? That feels like a pretty strong play to me.
I think that feels like both the strongest, I think the most obvious thing to do, right? Or maybe considering a Boss's Orders? I mean, surely you want to KO the Lugia with the most energy, right? That seems to be the...
Yeah, that definitely seems to be the most threatening thing
Yeah.
at the moment, and it's not like the active Arceus is going to be able to KO the Lugia V on the bench.
No, and I think you see there, maybe changed his mind a little bit. Maybe just like wanted to look at the bosses just to see what was available to him, and I actually didn't quite see what he grabbed.
I think it was the Duraludon and the Colress. So as opposed to going for anything like a Marnie to put those energies back into the deck, we're just going to see Colress and try to increase that hand size. It's kind of what we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
These decks don't really like to minimize their hand. They just want to add more cards to their hand.
Yeah, so Colress going to be able to do exactly that. So, yeah, a very, very sensible move, I think, here from Yan. And, I mean, in this situation as well, it was kind of, there wasn't really that much that he needed right from the start, but it was mainly just like Duraludon and then something to dig for more cards. So the Colress here does make complete sense.
Absolutely. Now, this will let Rafel keep a pretty large hand, so that is something to consider as a potential downside. Now, off the Colress, some interesting choices. There's the Switch in hand. That could be good right now. You probably want to hang on to the Duraludon V Max as well.
Yeah, but I think the other Arceus V Star can probably go, right? I don't think you quite need that at this point in time. We've neglected to mention, Rafel did actually draw a Lugia V Star off of the Read the Wind, so he has that ready the next turn to just evolve that bench Lugia and actually, get those Arceuses out. So that'll be good for him at least to start to make a recovery.
And we will just see the Trinity Nova. This is kind of interesting. I guess you don't want to just put your Duraludon up and open yourself up to being, hit by the Lost Vacuum plus Eviltal play. So that could be the reason that we're seeing Yan hold off on just taking the knockout. Yeah,
there's definitely merit to this line of play, I think, for that exact reason. So, and also loading up more energy onto the Duraludon as well to, again, enable like Hyper Potion shenanigans maybe. Although, as mentioned before, I think it's unlikely that, if the Duraludon's being affected, it's being knocked out because it's being affected by Yveltal. So, but I guess it does get the extra energies out of the deck anyway.
Draw for turn now. Plenty of options for Rafel with a massive hand. A couple of Archeops already being brought to the front. We know what that likely means. Summoning Star, that powerful new V-Star power of this Lugia V-Star, bringing those two colorless Pokemon from the discard pile into play. And now Primal Turbo can grab any two special energy out of the deck and attach them to one of Rafael's Pokemon.
Yes, and of course, Rafael's going to want to being able to actually charge up a Yveltal in one turn because he was able to get both the Arceuses out. This is something that he hasn't had access to before, so going to be a pretty huge deal. Now, it's going to be interesting to see whether he goes for it this turn or not, because obviously there's like a multitude of pieces that he needs to find in order to make this combo work. Oh, actually, it's going for it.
Wow, so, that must mean Rafel in hand already has a Gust card and the Lost Vacuum.
Well, I say we know he has Lost Vacuum, because I think we saw it earlier. So, yeah, I guess, like you said, he must have a Gust card as well. He's just going for it.
Either a Serena or a Boss. Yeah, that's the only way this play makes sense. So, Rafel has drawn the exact combo of cards needed to answer Yan's start here.
Wow, and we were just saying, Yan getting the ideal start with that nuts top deck of the Arceus V-Star, but it's just not going to matter. Like, Rafel can just retreat this Lugia and then bring up the Yveltal, and we know the answers must be there, right? We saw the Vacuum, and we must see the Gust card soon.
Yeah, Rafael's not going to mess this up. There's not going to be any mistakes for sure. Yep. Lost Vacuum can discard, Lost Zone, that big Parasol. Send it to the Lost Zone, and here comes a Serena as well. Bring up that Duraludon.
Wow.
Come to Eviltal, and amazing destruction. Doesn't do any damage, but it takes that KO.
Exactly the perfect combination of cards for Rafel to counter Yan's answer counter to the Lugia deck, and you've got to be feeling pretty sad if you're Yan at this point. I mean, the game's not over yet, not by any stretch, especially given that your deck is built this way to beat a deck like Rafel's, but we know for a fact that Yan's other big parasols in the prize cards.
Right. But something to note, though, if Yan can just knock out this Eviltal, Rafel does not have a way to reuse Eviltal. Doesn't have a way to get it back, so doesn't even really need the big Parasol at this point. Just needs to be able to withstand the potential of a Boss's Orders or Serena to take out this Duraludon.
Yeah, and then at that point, if Yan, as is more than likely, does take the KO on this Yveltal, Rafel needs to find something to bring up that Duraludon this turn to KO it before it can become a VMAX.
Yeah, right now, like ASAP, that's what Rafel needs. Now, Yan needs to just hope that Rafel does not have that option. He's going to do everything they can. See the Fighting Energy come down to the bench. It's a couple Metal Energies. Is there even any in the deck?
They're on the hand, aren't they?
Oh, yep. Had a bunch in the hand earlier. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, given that if you can get the VMAX out, you're pretty safe. I think not being able to power up straight away is fine. But now, it's all going to come down to whether Rafel can find this answer and KO the bench.
I do think I see a Quick Ball in hand, and as long as that Luminion V is still in the deck, we could see Luminous Sign fetch out the Serena or Boss's Orders.
this might be it. This might be Rafael's way of like actually locking out this unfavorable matchup. And yeah, there it is. Luminion, Luminous Sign. There's a Ghost of Boss's Orders that works too, of course. Primal Turbo, is there enough energy in the deck to get the KO? Surely there must be.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it just needs a couple more. I think there's a couple in hand as well. Doing just a little bit of the math. You're doing 220 base, and you have to account for, Duraludon has 220 HP. You need to account for that hard coat ability, which you already are doing since there's a choice belt. So you can just grab a double turbo and a capture, which I think is what Rafel is just making sure of, and that will still be enough to knock out this Duraludon.
Yeah. Maths is very important in Pokemon.
Yes.
You got to make sure to work out the numbers, make sure it's all correct. But yeah, the choice belt essentially cancels out the hard coat, and then you got the double turbo and the powerful colorless kind of canceling each out as well. So that means 220 against 220, which is Duraludon's HP. So that's an exact knockout.
Yes. Raphael just wanting to make sure that nothing gets messed up in the spot. It would feel so bad to be so far ahead and feel like you're in a great spot and then just mess that little bit of math up, and then your opponent gets a Duraludon VMAX in play, and then it just kind of goes downhill from there.
Yeah, you want to be careful. So there it is. Boss's Orders brings up the Duraludon V, and Jan recognizes that's the exact math, and that was going to be enough to KO the Duraludon V, and Rafel is now only one prize away from winning this game. What do you do if you're Jan in this situation? You
got to just knock out this Lugia and hope that your opponent does not have enough powerful colorless energy remaining in the deck in order to power up this Lugia V on the bench. Of course, Rafel does still need a Lugia V-Star. This would be a great time for Jan to maybe go for a Marnie in this spot.
Yes.
At this point, it's pretty much this Arceus or bust. Like, this is the only Pokemon that Jan can have in play for the rest of this game, most likely. No supporter, though, will just be the knockout. Does Rafel have it?
His hesitated body language tells me no,
okay.
So I imagine he's probably going to have to dig for it here. So let's see what he can do.
I think the main thing we need is the Lugia V-Star, and there is the Evolution Instance. Now the question is going to be how many special energies can you get? You do need 3 powerful colorless energy here. Are all 3 of them in the deck? There's one. There's not the other. Is it in hand?
I think it's in hand. Yeah,
yes.
There it is.
There it is. Rafel with 3 powerful colorless energy deals 280 damage to knock out the Arceus V-Star and taking this game.
Taking this game and the match. Huge congratulations to Rafel, able to beat the counter deck, overcome the unfavorable matchup, and take a 2-1 win in very, very difficult circumstances. Huge congratulations.
And you can see Rafel breathing a sigh of relief there. That is, anytime you go up against a deck like that is literally built to beat yours, even if you have outs, it is such a stressful game.
Yes.
Rafel navigated that excellently. Things did not go his way in game number 2, drawing all of those energy cards, but was able to keep his resolve, fought back in game 3, and was able to win the match.
He almost looks in disbelief, right? I mean, he did play somebody else, but he's thinking to himself, oh my goodness, that could have gone the other way so easily, but I was able to find my answers to Jan's counters, and I was actually able to beat what could be, the unfavorable counter deck.
And let's, of course, not sell Jan short there. Played great throughout that game. It's a good matchup for you, but you lose good matchups. Even if it's a 70-30,
yes,
you can roll 30% 2 times, right, in a best-of-3 game. And that's maybe what happened here for Jan in that game. Definitely not out of the tournament by any means. 4-1 is still an incredible start to an international championship. So, and there's plenty more Lugias for Jan to try to feast on throughout the rest of this tournament.
That's exactly what I was going to say. 4-1 in a field of a lot of decks that you do very, very well against. I think you've got to be feeling pretty good still.
Absolutely. So we'll be trying to get to speak to Rafel very soon. I'm definitely interested to see how he feels about that game, and especially about how he wanted to approach it, knowing that he had the answers, but how he needed to carefully manage those resources. Like we saw in game number 1, holding onto that Lost Vacuum super early on. Didn't end up playing it in that game, but he recognized how important that card was. Couldn't discard it off the arena to draw more cards.
No.
Needed to keep it in hand, even though he drew 1 less card.
Yeah, again, I think sort of showing that he recognizes and almost certainly built his list with, just enough answers in it to, answer any Arceus Duraludons they may face. Already aware of the fact that people will be playing it going into this weekend, but also, again, it's about that sort of decision of how much weight do I want to put into countering this, whilst at the same time not sacrificing too much of my consistency that I lose everything else. And I guess Rafel managed to find the right balance.
Yeah, it worked out very nicely. I mean, Lost Vacuum is a card that I think is really good in that matchup, but it's just kind of randomly useful, right?
Yeah,
Disrupt
true.
your opponent, get rid of an air balloon, right? Slow them down. You can also get rid of a collapsed stadium in play that's kind of hindering you. So, and of course, Path to the Peak as well would probably be the main reason that it's still good, right?
Yeah, I think those are the kind of the best kinds of answers to counters that you have. Is if it's something that, yes, it's a good answer to the deck that counters you, but it's something that is also fringe useful in other situations, because then it's not just like a dead card in all those other matchups, and I think that's very important as well.
Yes, I'm sure there's been plenty of reasons that Lost Vacuum has gotten used throughout the course of the tournament so far for Rafel. Rafeel's a great player as well from Latin America, has gotten top 8 in multiple special events and regionals in the past, so someone who's definitely no stranger to success, but has not had a deep run at the Latin American Internationals quite yet.
Could this be the year?
This very well could be. I mean, and starting 5-0, whew, what a great place to be, without a doubt.
You've got to be thinking, yeah, the chances are pretty good, right, for a deep run. Just like one more win, and then you're basically guaranteed day 2 by 1 tie. It's a very, very good position.
Sorry, let me rephrase. Rafel did get a top 32 finish, which is, I think, we should still consider a deep run at internationals with how massive these tournaments are. So definitely someone who's done well at this tournament before, but is still, I mean, if you're not in the top 8, that's kind of what cements you as like a top tier player, right?
Yes,
especially at
so.
this prestige level of event. Someone who can make top 8 in a field this large with all of the best players in the world participating in the tournament. Everyone should recognize you as an excellent Pokemon TCG player without a doubt.
Yeah, no doubt at all. I'm very curious as to hear like some of his thoughts on sort of his deck building process, I guess, and when he was thinking about whether he was thinking deeply about Arceus Drowdon and all the other counterbalancing factors in terms of deck building that go into making his list, and also about that specific matchup as well. How he felt about seeing a handful of like 10 energies or whatever else.
Oh gosh, yeah, that game too has to be that is a nightmare for any Lugia player, and that's something that'll happen not too irregularly with that deck, where you just somehow your energy just find their way into your hand. I mean, I guess you do play usually like 13 or 14 energy cards, so it makes sense you'll have a decent amount sometimes, but that feels really bad.
I mean, in most Lugia lists I've seen, actually, the count is more like 16. So,
sure. 16 in Raphael's, yeah.
Yeah, so, you absolutely have a chance of seeing your hands just clogged full of energy like that, because even when you play that many, that's almost inevitable sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes I've even seen people putting a Ranguru in their Lugia deck